1,000 federal agents apparently on the way to Minnesota as we speak.
And I think if we do not see Tim Walz in prison, some of this money is landing in the hands of terrorists, of Al-Shabaab terrorists. The system is completely broken.
Hello and welcome to Harry Cole Saves the West, the show where American grit meets British backbone. Tonight, a warning from Minnesota that the West cannot ignore. Prosecutors in America have uncovered a Somali fraud ring that looted over $1 billion from Minnesota's welfare system, while officials and even the Governor, Tim Walz, is being accused of looking the other way. Fake companies, fake invoices, whole networks set off to squirrel away millions of dollars every week back to Somalia. Joining me to break all of that down is political commentator Chloe Trapanotto. Welcome back, Chloe. Talk us through this. You've been covering this, this scandal in some depth. What is going on?
Well, Harry, thank you so much for having me back. I know you don't
Always
celebrate
welcome.
Thanksgiving as a Brit.
Hey, I had my first Thanksgiving. It was nice. Good. I ate a pie.
I'm glad. And I heard that 40% of British people are now, young Gen Z British people are now celebrating Thanksgiving.
Well, there's a lot of friendsgiving. It seems to be the thing that people do. Yeah.
Right.
But we eat like that every Sunday, though, in Britain. That's the whole point.
There you go.
We have a roast all the time, so I don't really know what the big deal is.
All right. Well, the Somalia problem is insane. And it goes back to 30 years ago whenever TPS was introduced for the Somali people. They were given temporary protected status. And for some reason, it's just been going unchecked and unnoticed. And for 30 years, presidents have not rescinded that TPS. And the Somalis have created something of a cult up in Minnesota and Dearborn, Michigan. And it's insane what's been uncovered.
But it seems that, this is fraud on an industrial scale. You can't do that without, someone on the inside going, what the hell is going on? The fascinating thing I thought they first got caught was when they couldn't work out why there's suddenly massive spikes of autism in the community or in the state. Yeah. And then actually they looked back and realised it's not autism. People were faking autism, with a wink and a nudge, presumably from doctors, from community leaders, from schools to basically claim for benefits that were then shipped back to Somalia. Is that how widespread was that? Is that fair?
Well, I think this all kind of came to a head a couple months ago, whenever Tylenol and autism were on the docket, and we were all hearing about how autistic rates have shot up in recent years. And lo and behold, in Minnesota, it turns out 1 in 16 4-year-old Somalis there, 1 in 16 are claiming to have autism. So Medicaid claims for autism in Minnesota because of the Somalis there.
How did it take so long for that to be noticed?
In 2018, there was $3 million worth of Medicaid claims for autism. In 2023, there was $399 million worth of Medicaid claims for autism. The fraud is unbelievable. I cannot believe. So yeah, it's been uncovered, and thank God for the autism research we're doing, because it's all coming out.
So for me, there's two stories here. There's one, let's break it down to the sort of global issues, and then let's break it down into the political row that's coming. I mean, there is an allegation that this money has ended up in the hands of Al-Shabaab terrorists. Yeah. So the US taxpayer, through this fraud, has inadvertently been funding terrorism.
Right. Because of these remittances, they are literally sending suitcases full of cash back to their Somalians in Somalia. $1.7 billion worth.
There's 1,000 federal agents apparently on the way to Minnesota as we speak to investigate this. How wide do you think this is going to go? I mean, is it going to, this sort of thing doesn't happen by itself, clearly. There has to have been some sort of issue. Was it that the state was, officials in the state are bent? Or was it that they were afraid of being called racist?
I think it was both. I think it's twofold, because Tim Walz obviously knew about everything that was going on. He was hiring his friends, he was letting his friends off easy, and they were telling members of their cabinet and different interns and such to not speak up and not point out the fraud, or they were called racist.
And also, presumably, the Democrats have quite a lot, running the state, had quite a lot of, skin in the game in terms of these people, and the fact that these are donors, these are people that help them get out the vote, these are organisers. Do you think there's a political blind eye that's been turned here?
Oh, absolutely. And I think if we do not see Tim Walz in prison in the next few years, I'm going to be pretty upset.
This is the guy that came pretty close to being the president, being the vice president.
The vice president. It's insane. I cannot believe that he turned a blind eye to all of this, and it's only now just coming out. I don't agree exactly with what President Trump called him, but he was totally right.
For people that haven't been following, I am going to say it because we're not on the radio tonight.
Oh, great.
But Trump called him a retard, right?
He did. Sure did.
Walz has hit back, quite punchily, questioning the Trump's mental status himself. The Democrats do dish it out, right? They throw a lot of accusations around. They throw a lot of, they're basically saying that Trump is insane, dying, has cancer, has had a stroke.
Right.
They point to his hand. They're saying he's asleep in a cabinet meeting today. They can't get too upset by this, right?
Well, here's my thing, Harry. If Tim Walz is going to go on live television and say that he woke up wishing that Donald Trump was deceased, if he's going to honeymoon in China, if he's going to oversee the governorship of a state that is committing $8 billion in fraud, then you know what? And if his state is going to be fraudulently asking for Medicaid claims for autism, $399 billion worth or $1 million worth, then you know what you do? It's justified that he called him a retard, in my opinion. If you're gonna let autistic money go into the hands of people who do not deserve it, it's a little bit retarded.
I mean, it does seem. I do remember the word is. Yeah, the president of the United States is tweeted. Well, with Truth Socialing it out. I mean, we do have kind of crossed a line here, right? But then, in the eyes of the American public, Tim Walz is kind of done, right? He was even having. I've had the pleasure of having to read Kamala Harris's book. She basically says she was disappointed in his performance and when Kamala Harris is saying she's disappointed in your performance as a candidate, you're really in trouble. He hasn't ruled himself out of a till at 28, but I mean, he was pretty weird on the campaign trail. And for a man throwing accusations around for other people being quite strange, he's presumed, this is credibility. You say he should be in prison, but as a national figure, he's toast because of this, right?
Totally toast. And like you said earlier, some of this money is landing in the hands of terrorists, of Al-Shabaab terrorists. So that crosses international waters. Grounds for imprisonment, if you ask me.
So what happens next? Because obviously immigration, welfare, the debate about assimilation into communities has exploded since the horrific incident we saw on the night before Thanksgiving. In terms of the Afghan community, Trump has said, immediate pause on Afghan or visas. There's already 75,000 people have been brought here in Operation Save Our Allies or whatever it was called. It seems to have exploded into the national conversation in a way that it hasn't been for a while. Then on top of this, you've got the Somalian population. The Republican base and actually general public more widely are expecting big things on this, right?
They are, and I think they are delivering on that. President Trump's polling numbers in terms of immigration have been astounding, and they have not faltered whatsoever. And I think the fact that he paused third world migration is a really, really good thing. And it seems harsh to somebody who has a bleeding heart. However, the reality is the system is completely broken. And you cannot allow more and more people to come in, more asylum claims to be fulfilled until that system is paused, looked at, healed, fixed, and then we can reevaluate and go forward.
President Trump said something really interesting the other day. He basically said, once you're here, it's impossible to get rid of them. That's the problem, is the fact that, yes, there was no doubt that a lot of people from Afghanistan in the botched extraction from Kabul, a lot of people who helped the West, who helped, Britain, who helped America, translators, special forces, were brought here. But then, within that, they brought at times up to 25 family members. That's a whole village coming over. And then the suggestion is that the overstretched security services vetted every single one of these people and found nothing wrong with them, and there was no issues with them. We're having exactly the same debate back in the UK at the moment. There's been a slew of murders, of robberies, of rapes that involve members of the Afghan community. And these are people that have either come illegally on small boats or they've come legally in the extraction, but have been background checked, but clearly pose a risk to the community. How without sort of fundamentally ripping up this idea that, how do we get to what do you do next? How do we get to a situation where it is possible to actually say, well, we need to review every single one of these visas. We need to redo the security checks, and we need to start deporting people. Is that politically possible, do you think?
I think so. And because they're doing it right now, I mean, they've completely paused all immigration inward. So then the next step is every single asylum claim. I know there was hundreds of thousands that came after the completely botched withdrawal from Afghanistan. Like you said, hundreds of thousands came over in Operation Allies Welcome under Joe Biden. However, every single one of them needs to be looked at, and it's completely possible. However, you're talking about their families. They've obviously put down roots.
Yeah.
So can you deport their family members only if they are a public safety threat and if there is any
But how do you know they're a public
security
safety threat? I mean, frankly, without putting too fine a point on it and making a grim point, is how do you know they're a public safety threat? Until they murder a 20-year-old National Guard on duty at point-blank range with a pistol, having driven 3,000 miles across America to do so?
That's a wonderful question, because our FBI under Joe Biden could not even track the person that almost killed President Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania. I mean, he was a walking
We still don't really
flag.
know a huge amount about that.
Right, except it's been uncovered by somebody in the New York Post that he was a psycho person online, and he was writing so many ominous and deadly threats. And he went under the radar. So I think it's just going to be a lot of surveillance, not in a Chinese kind of way.
Yeah.
However, for those that came here under that operation, under Joe Biden, I think they all need to be looked into and scrutinized.
Do you think, I mean, not many people accuse me of being a bleeding heart liberal, but I mean, Trump today calling Ilhan Omar garbage, saying all Somalis are garbage. Ilhan Omar is garbage, she's garbage, her friends are garbage, I don't want them in our country. Their country is no good for a reason. Their country stinks. We don't want them in our country.
Lord have mercy.
I mean, it's not exactly high-end public policy debating that, is it?
No, it's not.
But do you think is this Trump with his whippet-like sense of where the country is and where his base are? Is this him playing to the base?
I think he's playing to the base pretty well. I think the base, they take what he says with a grain of salt. They hear him call in Ilhan Omar garbage, and they're like, yeah. And they hear him say her friends are garbage. They say, yeah. He's playing to the base well. However, the independents he's not winning over at all here, and we're coming up on the midterms.
Well, it doesn't. Yeah, he's not on the ballot in the midterms anyway, is it? That's the thing. It's like he doesn't have to win another election.
Right.
We're keeping a close eye on what's happening in Tennessee tonight in terms of the race that shouldn't be tight but is tight, an area where Trump won by 22 points. But it's competitive-ish. I think to lose it would be spectacular. But a single-digit win for the Republicans is going to cause all sorts of pre-midterm clucking. It doesn't really matter for him. He can say what he wants, right? But then when he's not on the ballot himself, the Republicans take a dip.
They do, because right now a lot of the MAGA identity is Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So Republicans individually are going to have to put forward policies that just win over the American people. And if it's not going to be on immigration, because President Trump has handled that, people really don't think about our southern border very often. They really just think about, at this point in time, affordability. So I think if Republicans before the midterms, separate from President Trump, can really harp on the fact that grocery prices are down, gas prices are down.
Which is all the Democrats are talking about, in a way. And, you've got Donald Trump saying, the White House is desperately trying to pivot him back to domestic issues of immigration, where, as you say, he does very well, of affordability, of which he kind of questioned whether that even was a thing, right? He says gas prices are low, everything's fine, inflation's coming down, everything's great, the country's what's so hot right now, right? But people aren't feeling that.
They're not feeling that. I mean, to an extent, things feel better. Of course, I was driving home from Thanksgiving. I saw my gas was $2.88. That's great. Under Biden, it was almost $4. And sure, my prices at the grocery are a little bit less. But for the average American, prices are not what they were 5 years ago. And I think that's what people are really looking at. They're not comparing it to a year ago. They want to see prices from before COVID.
Do you think this is a bit of politics in there with Trump then, in fact, that, he has taken a lot of heat in the last few weeks from the MAGA base, since basically the out of kilter elections with the Virginia election, the loss of New York, to the cruel yoke of communism, which I think we discussed last time you were with us.
Yes.
He has sort of started to recalibrate and bring it back to domestic issues. So we're going to hear a lot more of immigration and eggs and gas, right?
We are. And I mean, things like what happened today. So now it's come out that with the Trump account, the Trump savings account, not only are there $1,000 going
Explain just for people that aren't up to speed.
Yes.
Explain how that works.
Just before I came on the show, I was working for my job and posting all over X regarding Trump's recent press conference that he just had with the Susan and Michael Dell, who
who've
donated
given $6.8 billion this morning, which will be divvied up to $250 for 25 million kids now, right? So they presumably they stick that in an investment fund.
Yep.
So we had something similar in Britain. It didn't really work, but I mean, because people didn't really know about it, so they got to 18 and then they didn't know that they could actually claim this £1,000 or whatever it is. So they stick it in an investment fund? What, a bit of federal money and a bit of donor money, or is it just donor money? Or
both. So it's going to be $1,000 in federal cash, and then like these philanthropists, there's going to be.
And who qualifies? Babies who are born now, or young people under 8?
Babies born now and for the next 5 years.
And then they will be able to get that when they're 18?
They'll be able to get it when they're 18. And then there's also the federal funding that goes towards children 0 to 2 years old. But that's separate from what the billionaires just donated. That's just going to go from the babies.
So the hope is this is getting parents' votes rather than, it's going to take a little while for these kids to be able to vote, right?
I think it's 0 to 10-year-olds that fall under a certain their parents fall under a certain income bracket.
This is kind of, they've had the Trump checks, right? And they're sort of he's sort of threatening to bring those back, except I think until someone pointed out that actually giving everyone $1,000 right now to spend would be massively inflationary. So the tariff, we talked about sort of, tariff offset checks for people. It's all got a bit quiet on there. It does feel like they're slightly scrapping around for anything beyond, shouting loudly about immigration.
I liked what Ted Cruz had to say today. Senator Ted Cruz said,
a man who's clearly running for president.
Maybe.
He's running. Look at that podcast.
He shouldn't even bother.
He's running.
He shouldn't bother. I had this conversation with somebody today. I want it to be J.D. Vance. That's my take. And I don't think it's going to be Marco Rubio.
I think it's going to be. I think they've got the hell of a top ticket. We're getting to track. We'll go back to the checks. But no. But I mean, in terms of the ticket, it's going to be Rubio, Vance, but Vance. One of them's going to be at the top of it, right?
Right. So Ted Cruz.
And then DeSantis is going to be out of a job in Florida though because of the term limits.
Poor DeSantis. And he's crushing it down there.
I know, but he was so bad last time. And Cruz is right. I mean, no one launches a podcast unless they want to be president, right?
Right.
That's why we're here.
You're right. Oh, I'm not ready to be president.
You said you were running last time. You said more young people needed to be involved in politics.
I'll just stick to my social media platform. I don't
right.
think I could take the scrutiny of being the president. People would rip me apart, and I don't know if I have the heart. I cry a lot.
You're a bleeding heart liberal.
I'm a bleeding heart liberal. But Ted Cruz said today, the incentive for these philanthropists and billionaires to start investing in America's youth and see all that compounded, it creates capitalists.
Yeah. Well, that's what the sort of fallout from the Mandami thing was. Steve Bannon said it, Vance said it, Trump himself has kind of hinted at it. Peter Thiel has said it loads of times, which is actually, if the next generation don't have a stake in this, if they feel like they can't, get a job, get a house, afford to bring up a family. Yeah. Then why would they not? Why would they defend capitalism? Why wouldn't they go for the nice free stuff of Mandami?
Exactly.
And is £1,000 check in the post going to be enough for that? It feels to me they need to engage a little bit more.
I think you're right, but I think even that starting point is a really good incentive for not just, obviously, politicians to put money in those bank accounts, but if you have parents that want to invest in that same account or family members, maybe you put a birthday check in there, you save your money while you're working. And he used an example and he said, let's say you have a daughter right now and you put you have the $1,000 from Trump, and then if you put $5,000 a month or a year away every year, compounding over time, if she continues to save, by the time she's 35, she will have $700,000 in that account.
From this $1,200 odd now?
Just the amount that they started in the Trump savings account, and then plus $5,000 a year money from family, friends, employers, with that compounding interest. And if the S&P 500 continues to grow at the rate that it's growing, you end up with a lot of cash in there. And like you said, people feel like they have a stake in the game. With that money, obviously, she could buy a wonderful home, start a family. And I think that would really.
How much of this is cutting through, though? Obviously, we talk about the midterms. People are looking a bit worried. Publicly, everyone's saying, "Oh, it's going to be fine," and the Republicans are saying it's going to be fine, and the redistricting is going to help them out. But that seemed to have hit a few bumps. But privately, everyone is saying, "Yeesh, this is looking pretty grim." For the president, though, this is a kind of survival matter because we saw what happened last time he didn't control the House, and he was impeached twice, I think it was. He was bogged down in inquiry after inquiry. We're going to see the sons dragged into it, the family, the crypto, the ballroom. How it is a massive issue. How bleak do you think it really is for the Republicans, or actually is there any signs that they might hold the House?
Obviously, it's not ever great for the party in power, midterms-wise. However, Americans are looking to a couple different things right now. They feel great about the border. That is not even a thing on their minds anymore.
It's almost kind of neutralised it. It was effective. I mean, the deportations aren't up. There's still some way to go for the millions that he promised. Right? He's in the tens of thousands rather than he's in the hundreds of thousands rather than the tens of millions.
Correct. But so far, so good. And then also you've got foreign policy, which Americans by polls approve of that. But again, it's just going to be affordability. So if the one big beautiful bill, if those tax cuts, if all of the different incentives and different little
lots of things have to come right very early next year. Inflation really does need to come down. Rates need to come down. Possible peace deal in Ukraine could come together. I mean, he's gambling. He's a gambler, but I mean, he's going to need a lot of luck here.
He's going to need some luck, and I think he's going to need a little bit of suaveness on his X, maybe a little bit less R word, a little bit more Republican support.
I mean, he's calling his political opponents retards. Yeah. He's spending quite a lot of his day, it seems, building a giant palace off of the East Wing made of gold and marble.
They will get him for that.
You're sitting in anywhere outside the bubble and looking at that and thinking, is this guy really? This is the guy that claimed to have my back. This is the guy that spoke up for the little guy, and instead he's firing architects and ever expanding his sort of mausoleum.
Oh, but here's the thing. Even if he didn't build that ballroom, the Democrats would have found something to complain about. I was reading a post from the New York Times that they're already very, very upset about the Trump accounts and the $1,000 going to the young kids.
What are they moaning about that?
Oh, they said something about taxes. I didn't read much further into it than that. But also, I mean, the ballroom, it's not costing the taxpayers anything. It's going to be beautiful once it's done being built. Should he have waited till after the midterms? Maybe. But
not if he wanted to build it in time for him to actually use it.
Exactly. So I think, again, as long as they stick to delivering on the promises that they made to the American people. I mean, the reality is we live in America. This is the greatest country on earth. No offense, UK.
We're kind of friends now. We're friends now.
Yeah, we're friends now. You're right. But the thing is, the biggest thing that people have to worry and complain about is their finances and how much money are in their pockets, rightfully so. So if they can put money back in the wallets of American people before the midterms, I do think they have a much better shot of going in. Now, you brought up Afton Bain. If that race goes poorly for Republicans, you could see Republicans lose 20 to 40 seats in the House.
And that's when it gets gritty.
That will be the deciding factor.
Well, we will know next time we see you. We'll know whether Republicans are going into meltdown or not. Chloe Trapanotto, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
How do we find you? Where is the TikTok?
It's All Politics on TikTok and Instagram and on Town Hall Media.
There we go. Come back and see us soon.
Absolutely, I will. Thanks, Harry.